Monsieur le Ministre, bonjour.
Bonjour.
So Cédric O, you've been the Secretary of State for Digital and Telecommunications since 2019. You're also a loyal participant to the GovTech Summit, and thank you for being here again this year. You've seen that the theme of this year's summit is from crisis to recovery. The French government has really recently forecasted a 10% recession in 2020 and is hoping for a recovery of 8% in 2021. So my first question is, you meet startups on a daily basis. How are they coping?
Well, I think that this period is both a period of threat, but also of opportunities for the startups. From a macroeconomic point of view, I think that there are some startups that have been encountering some difficulties. That's why we've been dedicating some funds to assist them and to help them cope with the crisis during the confinement period, especially. But I think that now the startups and the startup ecosystem can be a tool of the recovery. And this is what we're seeing all over the world, is that the digital sector is coping a lot better with the crisis than let's say the legacy sectors, because especially during the confinement, a lot of our life has been now an online life. So the question that I think we are facing now is, who will be building on top of the crisis? You know that, for instance, it's in Chinese, the character crisis is also meaning opportunity. And I think this is really what we are facing, is how we can foster the ecosystem, how we can help it in order it to be a lever on which we can rely to get out of the crisis. In 2019 in France, the digital sector was a sector that was creating the most numerous jobs. So we know that in the transition, in the transformation of the economy, digital will be even more important in the days and the years to come. So we have to. That's why in France we have decided to support the ecosystem in order to the ecosystem to go on creating jobs and to help us to get out of the crisis.
So let's talk a bit more specifically about GovTech startups. So startups that work for the public sector. In these times of crisis, is it good to have the public authorities as a client? I mean, we've seen how a crisis like COVID-19 can give a major boost to sectors such as online education, online health. On the other hand, startups, and there are quite a few of them who work for local authorities, it's a bit more difficult. So is there a risk that the public buyers, who are known to be quite risk adverse generally, might be even more so in times of crisis?
Well, I think it's much more an opportunity because with the confinement period especially, everything went online. So for those who is not completely aware of the fact that our world is more and more digitalized, as far as economy is concerned, as far as public institution is concerned, as far as public services are concerned, as far as our day-to-day relationships are concerned, it was like a wake-up call. So I think that even more in a period that we don't know when the pandemic will end, and there are risks of new confinements all over the world. I saw the announcement in the UK that there might be new confinement in the days to come or in the weeks to come. The transformation of the state is gaining pace. And as far as France is concerned, we have realized that we have to invest in digital education, in the digitalization of our public services. So I think that the coming days will be, and weeks and months, will be months of opportunities. Much more of threat in terms of public spending in digital tools. This is especially the case as far as education is concerned. We know that it's always a pain, it's always difficult to transform education, especially in old Europe. We have countries such as Japan, South Korea, or China, where the digitalization of education is really fast. But in old Europe, it was difficult. But with the confinement, we realized that we had to digitalize, we had to provide tools to our teachers, tools to our students in order for them to be able to continue and to go on with the teaching process. So I really think that there will be opportunities in the public sector, but also in the private sector, because the the companies that had been able to digitalize before the confinement coped a lot better than the others during the confinement. So I think that there is an overwhelming transformation within the society that is opening new opportunities for GovTech, for digital in general, but also for GovTech companies.
Well, thank you for this positive outlook. So your President Emmanuel Macron announced a few days ago a plan, France Relance, of 7 billion euros for digital, more than half of it devoted to the development of startups and French technological sovereignty. You set a target of 25 French unicorns, I believe, by 2025. And with 13 unicorns to date, we're well on our way to achieve this target. What's interesting is a good number of these unicorns actually have the public sector as a client. I'm thinking Dataiku, I'm thinking Doctolib, I'm thinking OVH, so to name just a few. My question to you is, do you think the French state is doing enough to help its unicorns or its GovTech startups generally, be it through capital funding or as a customer, compared to the US, for example?
I think we don't do enough. To be straightforward, I think that the French state has always been really supportive in terms of capital spending and in terms of investment, with the intervention, especially of the public bank, the BPI France, and we know that the setting up or the rise of the French digital ecosystem is really based on the help of the state. And I think that that's why also we decided in the stimulus package to continue to invest in startups, because we know that we want to help new champions emerge. You mentioned the goal of 25 unicorns by 2025. I think that we will achieve that goal. And now, actually, the president set a new goal that was to make decacorns emerge. And I think that is really what's at stake. We need unicorns, but unicorns are only a step within the process. We need to reach higher and to be able to make new champions emerge. So I think as far as investment is concerned, we've done the job. And that was structurally the case, but also during the confinement and the COVID crisis period, we were able to support our startups. What we have to do better is as far as public spending is concerned. We don't buy enough to our startups, and we know that this is something that, for instance, the US are doing better, and that is actually something that they are requiring from us. They don't only want us to be investors; they want us to be clients. And this is something that we have to transform. This is something that is really important for us. Within the stimulus package, there are also 2.3 billion euros within 2 years to digitalize the state. And I think that we have to channel a part of that money to our startups, because we know that this is much more profitable, both for them, but also for us, to buy from them, because it's giving them clients, it's giving them references, and it's helping them develop their tools and their products. And I think this is something that we have to do better. It's always difficult for big organizations such as big companies or legacy companies, but also for the state to transform their buying departments in order to accustom them to the startup ecosystem. But this is something that we have to achieve in the coming months and years.
Great. So we speak of national sovereignty. We should also speak of European sovereignty. And I think there was quite an important announcement before summer in the area of data and artificial intelligence, this Franco-German partnership, Gaia X, to develop a European offer of a trusted public cloud to get independence from the American and Chinese giants. This seems to me like a really good step and a model to replicate. Do you agree? And if so, which areas would you prioritize for similar partnerships?
Well, I completely agree. I think that as far as digital is concerned, we have to be aware that Europe is lagging behind China and the US. And this is a huge problem. This is an economic problem. This is a sovereignty problem, but also this is a a political and a democratic problem. Because if we look at the digital landscape, all the companies that are structuring our world on a day-to-day basis, be it Facebook, Google, Amazon, are American. And this is not a problem by itself, but the problem is that in a number of key technologies, the cloud is one of them, artificial intelligence is one of them, but also cybersecurity, quantum computing, and so on. If Europe is not able to be at the table of the countries or the continents that are considered among the best of them, then we are facing the risk to be completely outperformed and to be economically dependent, from a sovereign point of view dependent, but also from a democratic point of view, considering the footprint of platforms such as Facebook in our democracy and in our societies. So what we think, and this is something that we are really on the same page with the German, is that we have to be able to, in those critical technologies areas, to have our own knowledge. This is completely okay that we work and we are buying American products, but we have to have the choice. And we have to be able, for instance, in artificial intelligence, in quantum computing, in cybersecurity, in biotech, to have European providers, because otherwise we are completely dependent from other countries. And we see that in, competition between the US and China, the fact that we don't have the choice might pose some problem or raise some issues when we want to have our own advice or our own way in a world that is more and more complicated, to say so.
Yeah. So you on a different subject, you mentioned the talk of a possible second lockdown. It's definitely something that's quite topical here in the UK. You have taken action against what you call electronisme, which I would probably translate as digital illiteracy. Yeah. You've also taken quite strong commitments towards a universal fiber broadband public service by 2025, saying that basically everyone should have access to fiber broadband the same way they have access to water and electricity. And we've seen how critical both access to digital tools, be it through fiber, but also by digital literacy, how important it can be in terms of a global pandemic, be it for access for online health, online public services, online schooling. So I'd like to ask you, what are you doing today to reduce the digital divide in France in view of a possible second lockdown?
Well, it's not only in view of possible second lockdown. I think as the developed countries' governments are squeezed between two trends. The first one is the digitalization of the economy and the fact that we were mentioning critical key technologies and that we have to be on board and to invest more in innovation to be able to cope with the growing technology competition all over the world. So we have to be able to invest in quantum computing. But on the other hand, we have a significant proportion of our population that is, to some extent, digitally illiterate. To mention the figures in France, we consider that there is between a sixth and a third of the population that is lacking basic knowledge in terms of basically how to use a computer, how to get online, how to create an email address, how to send an email, how to be able to go online to their banking account. So they are lacking basic knowledge. And there is a huge tension because for those people, the digital gap or the digital divide is so huge that they cannot be on board all the rhetoric and the what we're saying about innovation. And I think that digital and especially technology has become all over the Western world, but I think it's much broader than this, a part of the problem and of the rise of the anger of the middle class. And I think what we saw in the Brexit, what we're seeing in Latin America, what we see with the election of Donald Trump in the US, but also in France with the Yellow Vest movement, digital and the growing digitalization of the society is part of the problem. Because a significant proportion of our population don't understand the world that we're living in. And they're saying, oh, okay, all of this is for metropolitan areas or for the haves, and we are not part of the transformation. And if we want to be able to continue to go on with innovation, and we truly believe in France that innovation is a part of the solution, not a part of the problem, then we have to keep everybody on board and to be able to come together. For that, we need to teach people about digitalization. When I say to teach people, it's teaching them how to use a computer. Really, there's a sixth of the French population that does not know how to use a computer. How can you speak about artificial intelligence or online regulation when people don't even use a computer? And so we have to teach them the basic knowledge in order to make them autonomous in a digitalized world. So that's why we in the stimulus package, we have decided to invest in technology and into innovation, but also we decided to invest in fighting illiteracy, digital illiteracy. So basically what we will do is to put on the ground more teachers and more places, to fund more teachers and more places where where people can be accompanied or can be helped as far as understanding or learning how to cope with the digital world.
Last November, during the last GovTech Summit, we presented a public report on GovTech in France, and it contained 15 key propositions to promote GovTech in France. And I'm thinking in particular, there was we were recommending an objective of 10% of public purchasing from startups by 2025. We also had propositions around the training of public buyers, because we know how important or critical they are in the process. We were also advocating the continued simplification of access to public tenders, because despite all the efforts that have been done this last few years, and there've been quite a few changes and improvements, we know it remains a major obstacle for GovTech startups. So my question to you is, where does the government stand on these propositions, on these issues? What are you doing to promote GovTech in France today?
I think that what we want to open, and the president mentioned it last week, is we want to open, how to say, un chantier. We want to work on that idea of how public buyers buy to startups. Because I think the fact is, it's not a money problem. It's not an investment problem. The problem is much more a cultural one. I think that public buyers and startups are not two worlds that are encountering each other very often. And I think that to some extent, the digital sector and the startups ecosystem is something that is not really known by public buyers. So, and I mentioned a little bit earlier that I think that now the next stage or the next horizon for public support in France, especially, is to be able to raise public spending in startups and to accustom public buyers to buy into startups. And this is what we have to work on, because since this is a cultural problem, not I think a money problem, this is much more a long-term agenda. But I think that this is something that we have to get a little bit into details in order to raise all the prevention or all the pain points that are making it more difficult for a public spender to buy to a startup than to a big companies. But I think this is really the next stage that we have to work on.
Monsieur le ministre, merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Vive la GovTech et à bientôt.
À bientôt. Merci pour votre invitation.